Sunhaven is a must-play farming game.
This is basically the most enjoyable game I've ever played in my life.
Leslie's having dreams about Sunhaven.
We are addicted to the Sunhaven life.
I'm gonna be a professional Sunhaven streamer.
I've seen this game everywhere.
Today we're bringing Sunhaven back.
Sunhaven might be right up your alley.
Have you played Sunhaven yet?
I love Sunhaven.
I love Sunhaven.
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 Sunhaven. Sunhaven.
Sunhaven is a popular cozy farming sim often compared to Stardew Valley, but with a significantly larger scope in both art and content. The game was successfully crowdfunded in October 2020, raising nearly $100,000 across both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The publisher and developer behind Sunhaven is Pixel Sprout Studios, a California-based company registered in January 2020 by Taylor Taw. Taylor is a name you'll never see publicly linked to Pixel Sprout Studios except in the company's official filings. While we're here, take note of Bruce, Brandon, and John. Just keep them in mind. Hi, I'm Harumi, and this is CozyGate. In this video, you'll hear testimonies from 5 Sunhaven artists who worked for Pixel Sprout Studios, some from the very beginning, others until very recently. For the record, I personally know one of the artists interviewed. 4 of them are comfortable using their real names, and one preferred to stay anonymous. To protect her privacy, I'll call her Helly R. I began by asking them, when did you start working for Pixel Sprout Studios and when did you leave? Helly opted to skip this one.
I started working at Pixel Sprout February 2020 and left March 2022. Generally speaking, I was one of the first people hired that was not a close friend or family to Bruce and left after early access.
Remember John? This is the same John listed on the Indiegogo campaign. He'll answer a couple more questions after this.
I had to do some digging for this one, but I started at the end of 2020 and left in early to mid-2022.
I started in November 2021 and left in March 2025.
I started working with Pixel Sprout in late November 2021 and terminated the contract in early 2024.
To find out about Taylor, I asked John, the most veteran Pixel Sprout Studios artist interviewed. Do you know who Taylor Taw is?
Taylor Taw, as far as I understand, is Bruce. Everything was signed as Taylor Taw on our contracts, even when it was before the company existed as Pixel Sprout Studios. Bruce has not said this directly to me. However, it's only ever been others like Michael, the former writer who left around when I did, who mentioned his name difference.
Why does he go by Bruce at Pixel Sprout?
Considering Bruce's like for masculine figures, and I recall him talking a bit about heroes as well as Batman, I believe he named himself after Bruce Wayne, but that's truly speculation. I don't mind that Bruce wants to be named Bruce, but it definitely was about masculinity and keeping his true name unknown even within his company.
By 2015, Taylor/Bruce was majoring in economics at the University of California, Irvine, and running self-defense workshops for women on campus.
Thanks to Taylor Taw and his workshops, I feel safe now.
And there you have it. That's just a couple of moves I teach in my self-defense workshops. Zot.
Zot.
By 2017, he was coaching League of Legends players.
I coach all roles in all matchmaking ratings and can also do group team coaching sessions. Best, Bruce T.
By mid-2019, Sunhaven development had begun. In just 6 months, he had hired a team of 7 people to work on the game. Another 5 months and the team had doubled to 14. An economics major turned self-defense instructor turned esports coach, now leading a team of 14 after just months of development. This explosive growth paints a picture of a rising star in the indie scene, right? Well, not so fast. To give you a glimpse of what's really been happening behind the scenes at Pixel Sprout Studios, the next 8 chapters are going to cover everything from company contradictions to chronic exploitation. But before going into it, let me clear my throat for a second. I know we all play cozy games to relax and escape real-life drama. I love playing farming sims for that exact reason. That's all this was supposed to be about. Yet, here I am, almost feeling guilty for playing a game because of the company that made it. Questioning the ethics behind things we consume can be exhausting. But as much as I'd love to turn a blind eye and just enjoy a made-up world, I can't ignore the fact that so many talented people left pieces of themselves in every part of Sunhaven. They gave so much. The least we can do is give our attention. On January 17, YouTuber MRIZ posted a video titled The Controversies of Sunhaven and Pixel Sprout Studios. It's bad. If you've been out of the loop, their video exposes Pixel Sprout's broken Nintendo Switch port of Sunhaven, misleading DLC advertising, unpaid fan labor, omission of credits, and an interview with Kyle, one of the former Sunhaven artists. Since that video aired, Pixel Sprout has been in full damage control mode, actively censoring any discussions around it.
All posts about your video are being deleted on both Reddit and Discord. What a joke.
Girl, you must have cooked on this video because the subreddit refuses to allow this. Anything talking bad on the devs is being removed immediately. What the fuck is going on?
The subreddit mods instantly wiping anything related to this video is crazy.
The subreddit and the Discord are removing all traces of this video, by the way. They do not want people to see this.
They also removed my post on Steam discussions where I pointed out the situation and the video.
I noticed the Discord server mods are deleting any chat that posts a link to this video and some of the conversation around it. I have no idea if those people are getting banned or not, but silencing any information or discussion is a red flag for me. The truth must come out.
The official Sunhaven Discord's been regularly removing questions and comments.
Hey, I'm not trying to start anything, but
did you guys see they deleted Tom's post about not being a part of the team anymore?
Of course, any positive messages defending their actions
The company already has
discussion regarding this issue. It makes it look like there's something to hide.
I recorded myself asking whether they plan to make a statement addressing the allegations. I asked, "Are you planning to release a statement addressing the issues raised in the recent video concerning former members of the team?" To no one's surprise, my message was quickly deleted too. And before you start wondering, no, this isn't just a moderation issue. Pixel Sprout is responsible for this. Take Reddit as an example. Until 3 days after MRIZ video was released, the only moderators of the Sunhaven subreddit were Brendan, Pixel Sprout's programmer, and the official Pixel Sprout Studios account, most likely managed by Bruce, the studio's director. They were both carrying out a wipeout, mass deleting posts and comments that raised criticism and concerns. They added a new moderator afterward, but up until that day, the ones responsible for the censor spree were Bruce and Brendan. As for Discord, the moderators are simply following Pixel Sprout's instructions. One of the current moderators provided me with a screenshot from the day MRIZ's video was released, showing Caitlin, Pixel Sprout's development manager, instructing them.
Hey everyone, there is a video being spread around with inaccurate allegations about Sunhaven and its development. While we review the claims that were made and decide how or if we would like to respond, any mentions of it should be removed. Allegations being repeated from the video, links to the video, or mentions of the YouTube video should be deleted from the Discord.
After that, they altered the server rules to fit the new directives.
Hi everyone, we did update the rules minorly today. You can refer individuals trying to stir up problems to the following rule. This server is for discussing Sunhaven and Sundown. Spreading rumors or discussing topics unrelated to the game may be moderated to keep conversations related to the official in-game content. Our goal is that people can come to the Sunhaven server to discuss Sunhaven or Sundown and have fun, not use the server to vent, dump on others, or spread rumors. We still have plans to update the server as a whole, so you can expect all of your feedback to be considered in the complete server overhaul.
Wouldn't it actually help to be transparent with the community for a change? If the allegations, or rumors as Caitlin put it, were truly inaccurate, why wouldn't Pixel Sprout Studios openly address them rather than sweeping them under the rug? Was their best approach really to put on an innocent face while going on a censorship spree? But censorship and lack of transparency aren't new. I spoke with a former Discord moderator who served Pixel Sprout from July 2021 to November 2023. In her own words,
I was told to delete comments talking about negative Steam reviews and to not respond to them.
Totally normal. From my perspective, Sunhaven's Discord moderators are being used to protect the company, essentially acting as unpaid PR or damage control. But the role of a volunteer moderator on any social platform should be to moderate for the community, not for the company. If a server is instructing its mods to censor criticism, suppress discussions, or defend corporate actions, that's a serious overstep. That's something for them to reflect on. Right now, here's how 4 current Sunhaven Discord moderators responded to this short quiz. For the question, do you feel that the moderation guidelines are transparent and fair? 3 responded no. 1 responded yes, I think it's fair for the most part. For the question, have you noticed an increase in censorship or tighter moderation over time? All 4 responded yes. For the question, have you ever been pressured by instructions or whatnot to justify or defend company decisions that you disagreed with? 3 responded no. 1 responded, I felt a little bit of pressure recently because it seems like we as moderators aren't supposed to believe these rumors going around. But I personally really do believe them. And I think people have a right for them to respond to them, but they haven't at all, which makes things even more sketchy. For the question, do you feel valued and respected by the Pixel Sprout Studios team? All 4 responded no. For the question, were there any internal discussions among mods about concerns with how things were handled by Pixel Sprout Studios? 3 responded yes. 1 responded, I haven't spoken to any other mods about this personally, so I have no idea how any other mods feel about it. And for the question, how do you perceive the studio's transparency? Very transparent, somewhat transparent, neutral, somewhat secretive, very secretive. All 4 responded, very secretive. One moderator elaborated, I feel as though the company is very secretive. We were working with Tav and she just disappeared, and no one said anything about it. Reflecting on her own time as a moderator, Astria offered this message to Sunhaven's mods and players.
Do not mod. Do not mod for them. Do not work for them. If you bought the game, refund it if you can. Other than that, uninstall it and toss it aside. Do not think about it. If anyone is in that Discord server, feel bad for them because they are probably currently in fucking hiding wondering what to do. You think the team was hit with demands from the users? My DMs were filled with hate, questioning the integrity of the team while questioning why I haven't done anything to solve the issues. I had to go far into even bug fix for people when that was someone's job. Eventually, I was told to stop helping, but then their bug chat was getting filled and was met with no solutions. So I had to DM the players, helping them to solve their games. Many were precious and even gifted me some DLCs. But at the end of the day, modding for Sunhaven was a burden. Your hard work and dedication is met with silence and maybe a few Kickstarter codes. Congrats. Thanks for taking the heat for us. Here is a penny code. Thanks.
Nearly 2 months after MRI's video, Bruce and Brendan issued coordinated responses on the very same day. Bruce put out an article on pixelsproutstudios.com containing mostly nothing burger assurances.
There have also been rumors about the studio contracting underpaid artists from outside of the United States. To set the record straight, everyone receives competitive US-based pay. As an art-led game studio, we care deeply about working with the best pixel artists, no matter where they are from.
Well, if that's true, how about we hear confirmation from the artists themselves? Later in this video, all 5 former artists directly contradict Bruce's claims. Are we supposed to take the studio owner's word over the people who actually did the work? I know I won't. Brandon also addressed the location of workers in his statement on the Sunhaven subreddit. Blepping Void Guardian asked about the percentage of Pixel Sprout's US-based workers. Here's how he responded.
Almost all of them live in the US, but we have a few people who live all over the place. So like 75+%.
Which again is the opposite of what the artists claim. Here's what Lucas had to say about it.
Excluding managers, 80% of the art department consisted of artists based outside the US when I left in March 2025. During my time there, I saw several other non-US artists come and go. Since my first day, we were always the majority. I'm also fairly certain the art team remains the largest department in the studio.
I guess people will have to do their own headcount, assuming Bruce actually follows through this time on adding developer credits anytime soon. And then Brandon's numbers will be fact-checked. Situations like this are exactly why company statements alone aren't enough to regain trust. Trust isn't given, it's earned. And once it's broken, words won't fix it, accountability will. So far, Pixel Sprout has failed to take real accountability. They haven't acknowledged their actions. Instead, they chose to deny it. They haven't allowed open discussions. Instead, they chose to censor criticism. They haven't credited their contributors. Instead, they chose to promise credits, not in their games, but on their website. And not now, but sometime in the future, yet again. Pixel Sprout's MO seems to be control over communication, image over integrity, and censorship over transparency. Make no mistake, this wasn't about addressing concerns. It was about controlling the narrative. If they wanted to rebuild trust, they'd start by truly being transparent, answering why credits weren't added for the past 4 years, compensating those who were underpaid, and proving through action, not just words, that they respect their community and workforce. As of today, you won't see credits anywhere in Sunhaven. And before someone points that out, the names written on the trees of Claude's backyard are not team credits. These are the names of Kickstarter backers. After Sunhaven 1.0 was released, more and more players began noticing that the game had no credits. Taviel, a former community manager, repeatedly assured players dozens of times that credits would be added in a future update. Nearly 2 years after her first response, with the game now past version 2.0, the credits are still missing. After Taviel was let go from Pixel Sprout Studios not much long after Sunhaven's Nintendo Switch release on November 29, 2024, virtually all questions regarding credits went either deleted or ignored. It's worth to mention that the Indiegogo campaign is the only official record you can find listing some people who worked on Sunhaven in the past. Indiegogo campaigns that receive funding cannot be removed, and their content can no longer be edited once the campaign ends. Luckily for John and other former workers, that means there's undeniable evidence of their involvement with Sunhaven. That doesn't mean Bruce hasn't made moves to get rid of it though, just like it seems to be the case with Kickstarter. On January 19th, John's partner Sarah posted on Blue Sky that the Kickstarter used to show all the team and then at some point removed everyone. It showed all of the original staff with pictures and names. I know and remember because I chose the photo my spouse used. This is backed by an archived snapshot of the Sunhaven Kickstarter campaign page captured on archive.ph on October 31st, 2020, 2 days after the campaign ended. Comparing the closed and archived Kickstarter pages, everything is identical, except for a single detail. Out of 57 images, the only one that disappeared is the team credits one. How they managed to do this is a mystery, as Kickstarter has similar restrictions to Indiegogo when it comes to ended campaigns. Truth is, whether Bruce likes it or not, the Indiegogo campaign sheds light on the early team. It only lists those working on Sunhaven as of October 2020. But at least their contributions aren't erased entirely. And it's not just paid contributors who went uncredited. Pixel Sprout Studios decided to outsource the game's 30,000 lines of dialogue translations to the players. Community-generated translations, as they put it, from community volunteers. Hear me out. Not crediting the translators is bad, but that's not even the biggest issue here. US labor law prohibits for-profit companies, like Pixel Sprout Studios, from arranging and benefiting from volunteer work. Under the FLSA, employees may not volunteer services to for-profit private sector employers. Note that in this context, employee isn't just someone on the payroll, it refers to anyone performing work that benefits the company. So even if players agree to do it for free, if their work replaces what a paid employee or contractor would do, they're considered employees for legal purposes and the law requires them to be compensated. Besides, only nonprofits, government agencies, and charities can legally use volunteers. Translating the game is an essential part of Sunhaven that directly benefits Pixel Sprout Studios by contributing to their profits. By labeling the translation work as volunteer, Pixel Sprout may be attempting to sidestep labor laws and capitalize on the goodwill of its fanbase. So, credits. Why should I care about credits if I don't even read them, you may ask. Well, my dear player, it's not about you. Players might not think much about credits, and that's totally fine. They're not primarily for us. But for artists, writers, programmers, and other creatives, credits are more than just names on a screen. They serve as proof of experience, help them land future jobs, and allow fans to discover and support their work. For a game as art-heavy as Sunhaven, wouldn't you expect to see more artists claiming credit for their work? You'd think the artists would hop on their official Discord and say, "Hey, I worked on Sunhaven, check out my socials for more cool art." But they don't. Why? An NDA is basically a legal promise to shut up. It's the part of a contract where the counterparty agrees not to share anything the company considers classified. Depending on the company, an NDA can be so broad and strict that it prohibits them from even acknowledging their work, meaning they can't say, hint, or even imply that they contributed to a project, had any involvement at all, or bringing it up for future employers. I can't say for certain if this applies to Pixel Sprout Studios, since only those who signed their NDAs know what's in them. But based on how most contributors never publicly mention their involvement, and Pixel Sprout makes no effort to credit anyone, it seems like a fair assumption. This brings me to the next set of questions for the 5 former artists of Pixel Sprout Studios. Did your contract include a non-disclosure agreement?
Yes, it did. It was a bit unclear to me what exactly this NDA meant. I took from it that it was basically a secret that I worked at Pixel Sprout Studios. I don't actually have a copy of this or of my contract. It was hosted on DocuSign and I could click a link to view it at first, but towards the end of my time in the job, I noticed I couldn't view the contract there anymore, and didn't have a copy sent to me.
A form of it, yes. Funnily enough, when I left, Bruce said he would give me another contract in case I would be contracted later for consultation, but he just ghosted me entirely after I started asking when credits would be included in the game.
Kyle skipped this one.
Yes, my contract included an NDA, a very restrictive one. It had no expiration date, and the way it was written basically let Pixel Sprout call anything confidential.
Yes, I was under NDA.
Were you told you couldn't publicly say you worked on the game?
It was strongly implied that we shouldn't mention that we work on Sunhaven while at the studio, or post about it/list it on LinkedIn. This was stressed to me during my onboarding. I found this surprising and a bit odd, but could tell this was important, so knew I shouldn't question it.
No, only because I worked on the game so early. There's a Kickstarter Q&A I was on, as well as a few posts that call me out specifically. To note, these back and forths we had was from when Jennifer was the one running socials, and not Caitlin with Bruce micromanaging it all. We did have specifications that we couldn't talk or post about the game unless it was cleared through Bruce, to the point that when I tried to respond to someone on Discord, Bruce interrupted me to double-check what I would be saying. I said I'd just not talk on the Discord after that, as I didn't want to have to filter every last word through him. Honestly, I'm one of the few people that is most easy to prove I worked on the game, but it's only because I was around since nearly the start. There used to be pictures of all of us on the Kickstarter, but that has been scrubbed from the internet with no warning as it was a form of credits. And funnily enough, maybe half or more of everyone in those credits left Pixel Sprout very unhappily, and because of Bruce.
It was a little while before I was allowed to say I worked there in the Discord and stuff. I never really talked about it on social media until the early access launch.
Sort of. Cameron, a former development manager, told Naomi and me in our onboarding meeting that we couldn't tell anyone about being on the team because we were in a trial period. Bruce would decide when that period ended, and then we'd be officially announced. But that never happened. So, I'm told I can't say I'm on the team. There are no credits. I signed an NDA. None of my peers are posting about it either. Could I talk about it? Maybe, legally. But it was clear they wanted silence.
When I asked if I could include on my TikTok account that I worked on Sunhaven, I was told a passive-aggressive, "We can't tell you no," but I was labeled untrustworthy and told I wasn't prioritizing the company.
First off, just a heads up. Everything I'm talking about here is based on California law since that's where Pixel Sprout Studios is located. Laws in other states or countries might be different. Also, I'm not a lawyer, so while I've done my research, take this as informational, not legal advice. For you to understand what an independent contractor is, here's the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. Employees perform services under the control and direction of an employer, both in what they do and how they do it. This means they're supervised, given specific instructions, and are expected to follow company policies and procedures. The employer often provides training, requires certain methods to be used, and enforces a structured workflow. Work schedules and deadlines are usually set by the employer, and employees' work and performance are regularly reviewed. For someone to be classified as an independent contractor, on the other hand, they must meet all three conditions of the ABC test. Let's use a game artist as an example. To be an independent contractor, the worker must have full control over how they do their job, both in the contract and in practice. If a game artist reports to managers, an art director receives ongoing review and approval for their work, attends team meetings, works on assigned daily tasks, and follows company-set schedules, deadlines, and production pipelines, then the company controls how their work is done. This fails condition A of the ABC test. To be an independent contractor, the worker's job must be separate from the company's primary business activities. A game artist cannot create ongoing in-game art for a game company as an independent contractor, period. While a contractor may take on limited batch commissions, design promotional artwork, contribute to company branding, or provide consulting services, any artist hired to produce in-game assets such as characters, backgrounds, environments, icons, UI, or animations must be classified as an employee. Game art is integral to game development. Without artists, a game company has no product to sell. This fails condition B of the ABC test. To be an independent contractor, the worker must regularly deliver similar services to more than one client. A game artist who works exclusively for one company has a long-term working relationship with them, relies on them as their only source of income, and has their availability controlled by the company is not operating an independent business. They're functioning as an employee. This fails condition C of the ABC test. If even one of these conditions is not met, the worker is legally an employee, not an independent contractor. Beyond how employees and independent contractors are classified, there are a few important ways they differ. Employees get paid hourly, on a salary, or through commissions. Independent contractors are usually paid per project, milestone, or deliverable. Employees typically rely on one employer for most or all of their income. Independent contractors work with multiple clients and aren't financially tied to just one company. Employees usually have an ongoing, long-term work arrangement. Independent contractors work on a temporary or project basis. Employees are bound to benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off, and sick leave. Independent contractors have to cover all this on their own. Employees are covered by labor laws, meaning they get minimum wage, overtime pay, required breaks, and workplace safety protections. Independent contractors don't. Employers handle tax withholdings for employees. Independent contractors have to cover their own taxes after being paid. Employees get reimbursed for work-related expenses. Independent contractors have to cover their own costs. Employees qualify for state unemployment and disability benefits. Independent contractors don't. The California Department of Industrial Relations states that misclassification of workers occurs when an employer improperly classifies their employees as independent contractors so that they do not have to pay payroll taxes, minimum wage or overtime, or comply with other wage and hour law requirements such as providing meal periods and rest breaks. Misclassification, or labeling a worker as an independent contractor when they should be an employee, undermines businesses who play by the rules and basic worker protections like minimum wage, paid sick days, and the safety of workplaces. Additionally, the misclassified worker has no workers' compensation coverage if injured on the job, no right to family leave, no unemployment insurance, no legal right to organize or join a union, and no protection against employer retaliation. This is a form of fraud. Is this the case with Pixel Sprout Studios? I don't know, and it's not my position to say. All I'm saying is that from my research of Californian law, it's very likely that no artist working for this studio should have been hired as an independent contractor, and possibly the same can be said about other roles in this company. I asked the artists about their employment relationship, and here's what they had to say about it. Were you hired as an independent contractor?
Yes, I was.
Yes. At the time I was hired, everyone was a contractor. By the time I left, I think there was only one employee, Caitlin, and nearly 24 contractors. Caitlin may also not have been an employee, and that could have been something just in the works and never happened.
I was indeed hired as an independent contractor. I don't know anyone who wasn't. Everyone was when I was there.
Yes, I was hired as an independent contractor. As far as I know, so was the entire art department, if not the whole company.
Yes, I was an independent contractor and was told by Bruce everyone else was as well.
How many hours were you expected to work per week? Did you work for any other clients while working for Pixel Sprout?
I worked a huge number of hours for the first few months, typically 45 to 60 a week, because I really wanted to work hard and be able to climb in the company. Unfortunately, my insane hours weren't really rewarded or acknowledged, even though I'd be churning out tickets as quickly as possible and taking the priority system very seriously. I'd stay up as long as it took to finish burn-down tickets, sometimes until 2 to 3 a.m., only for them to sit there for a few days, weeks, or never be used in-game. It was quite demoralizing. Because of all the work I was doing for Pixel Sprout Studios, I wouldn't have been able to pick up any other freelance work. I did let a few opportunities pass me by because of my focus on the studio, believing my dedication and hard work would pay off.
I worked 30 hours a week, but Bruce asked me many times to work more hours. I made the customization system and had a job turning Lexi's random drawn art into art that fit the game design and specifications, as well as animating most things as Lexi didn't animate. Towards the end, I also managed other artists' work. I worked for many other clients while at Pixel Sprout, such as RCA, Google, American Literature Magazine, and Wizards of the Coast. I also was using the time to learn more about programming and design. At the start, Bruce was quite happy that I was doing other cool things, though as time went on, he was putting on the pressure that I should be working more just at Pixel Sprout.
I was working around 30 to 40 hours a week. I was doing some smaller things on the side.
Bruce's exact words were, "The expectation is 30 to 40 hours each week. During crunch times, I often exceeded that. And I never worked for any other clients during my time with them. The workload and expectations left no room for outside commitments. It was essentially a full-time job, and that was the expectation from the start."
I was expected to work 40 hours. As I was being trained into the art lead role, I was expected to work more and be constantly available. Pixel Sprout was my only source of income.
If you watched MRIZ's video, you know that Kyle started at Pixel Sprout earning $15 an hour, later receiving a raise to $18. In the video's comments, a user named Brandon Likes Bananas, aka Brandon X, stood up for the studio saying,
The person in the video worked on the game before it was released, when the company was a startup with little money. The people who have been working on the game have been compensated since.
She also stated,
The video is half-truths. The devs are treated well.
And even went as far as blaming Kyle for being underpaid.
The artist chose $15 per hour plus equity. They pay their artists more than $15 without equity. Funny how the artist did not disclose the equity percentage or the hourly rate they would receive if they did not choose equity.
Why does this person seem to know about Pixel Sprout's worker compensation, and why is she defending this studio so passionately? Could she be right? I asked the 5 former Pixel Sprout artists, including Kyle, about their pay. These artists worked there between 2020 and 2025, so let's see if things really have improved the way Brennan X so confidently claims. How much were you being paid? Did you earn anything besides your hourly wage?
I got paid $17 an hour initially, and was given a raise to $18 an hour in my first year. My starting salary was just above the minimum wage in my country, but when I was hired, I was told this would continue to go up as I got past a probatory period. I was extremely excited to be working in my chosen field, and took the role on the proviso that I'd be paid more as soon as I was up to scratch with the workload and style. There was no option given regarding royalties.
At the start, I was paid $10 an hour. I was offered to receive a percentage of the game, but I turned that down because that would mean being paid less per hour and working more hours in trade. Instead, I took normal raises and never worked more than about 30 hours a week. I actually made more money than most people on the team.
I started at $15 an hour, and then in the last few months I was raised to $18. I was also given a percentage of profits, but got very little out of that. Around $1,000 total over my time there.
I started at $20 an hour, which Bruce still thought was too high. And shortly after Sunhaven's 1.0 launch, my rate was increased to $22.5. As an independent contractor, I only ever earned what I billed for services, meaning I earned nothing during inevitable breaks and sick days. No matter how hard I worked, my yearly earnings still placed me in the US lower-class income range. Revenue sharing or equity was never offered to me.
I started with a $10 an hour payment, and over 2 years it went up to $18 an hour. No extra pay. I think it's worth noting that I lived in Israel back then. I really believe they specifically looked for people from lower wage countries.
There you have it. Does this look like an improvement to you, Brandon X? What about you, Bruce? Does this mean everyone receives competitive US-based pay? Those artists were making less than or barely meeting the minimum wage for the county of LA, where Pixel Sprout is based. As an art-led game studio that cares deeply about working with the best pixel artists, do you have a statement on this? Another question I had was about DLCs. I didn't bring that up with John and Kyle since DLCs came after their time at the company. Did you work on any DLCs? If so, did you earn any royalties from their sales?
I did work on various DLC packs, but none of what I'd worked on was actually used. As far as I know, the packs were subject to approval by Bruce, which I thought would make more sense at an earlier concept stage rather than at full polish. The packs were quite time-intensive and usually on a burn-down priority, which was quite stressful and confusing when they inevitably didn't get used.
I worked on some DLCs, I never earned anything from their sales and was never offered any royalties.
I worked on content for at least 6 of the released DLCs, no extra pay or revenue share.
Bruce specifically said on his statement that the DLCs go directly towards supporting the people working on Sunhaven, and that they are a way for fans to continue supporting the team. But why phrase it so ambiguously when the repeated concern from players has been whether the original artists of these purely cosmetic DLCs actually see any direct benefit from their sales? Because the answer is, quite clearly, no. As if things weren't horrible already, remember that on top of all that, those artists were hired under independent contractor agreements. Another commenter touched on why that's an issue.
Everyone being contractors makes the pay even worse. Minimum wage shouldn't even be acceptable for a W-2 employee. But a contractor's rate should be much higher, as they need to pay self-employment taxes, which is higher than typical withholding, as it covers not only the employee's portion, but the employer's portion of Social Security and Medicare withholding.
They also have to be extra cautious with savings, since losing their job means no severance pay. And unlike traditional employees, contractors aren't paid for anything outside of invoice-eligible work. This means that an 8-hour workday of art production can easily stretch into 10 or 12 hours of total business time when factoring in unpaid tasks like invoicing, communication, project prep, research, or even breaks. On top of that, contractors don't receive overtime pay, even if they work more than 40 hours a week. All of this directly affects how much they truly earn. Let's take $18 an hour, the highest hourly wage most of these artists reached at Pixel Sprout, to make some calculations and put things into perspective. Now, let's assume an artist somehow managed the feat of working a consistent, productive, billable 7 hours per day, 5 days a week for an entire year, minus 10 days of unpaid vacation, 5 days of unpaid sick leave, and 10 days of unpaid holidays. Even working full-time year-round, this artist would still earn less than the lowest threshold of the middle-class range for a single-person household in the US, putting them in the lower income bracket and near the poverty line. Add a partner or a child relying on that income, and they fall even further into lower-class territory. When compared to the median earnings of all US workers and full-time workers, artists at Pixel Sprout Studios are earning as much as 52% less than the national median. The gap grows even worse when compared to their peers in the game industry. Looking up the average salary for game artists in the United States, it's clear that Pixel Sprout pays well below the industry average, so low that it doesn't even meet the lowest expected salary for the role. Even entry-level and junior game artists earn significantly more, and I know for a fact that Pixel Sprout has artists with over a decade of experience, true veterans of their craft. You've got to admire the confidence it takes for Bruce to claim that everyone receives competitive US-based pay, no matter where they're from. Perhaps, some might say, Pixel Sprout Studios underpays their artists because they simply can't afford higher pay. They're just a small studio. Well, once you have dozens of artists and other roles working for you at the same time, affordability stops being a valid excuse. If budget was that much of a problem, instead of spreading thin wages across so many people, the right thing to do would be fewer hires, fairly paid. Have you ever noticed how Pixel Sprout Studios is always hiring? And that their job listings often keep more than 10 different positions available at once? And even back when Sunhaven was still on Kickstarter, they were already going on hiring sprees? The overall perception and self-portrayal is that Pixel Sprout is just a humble little indie studio. But there's also an open secret in the games industry. Some studios brand themselves as small indie while quietly operating with deep pockets and a robust internal structure, all to maintain that scrappy underdog image. Some may never have fit the indie label. Others may have outgrown it, but their messaging remained unchanged. This branding can influence not only how the public sees them, but also how prospective employees approach salary expectations. If no one realizes that a so-called small indie studio is actually working with a multi-million-dollar budget, candidates are far more likely to accept subpar rates, like $18 an hour, thinking that's all the studio can afford. It makes you wonder, what kind of studio is Pixel Sprout, really? Pixel Sprout's most consistent voice online insists.
They are actually a small team.
If the company is indeed small in headcount, two things need to be asked. First, are the artists being overworked? Because the sheer volume of artwork in Sunhaven doesn't look like the product of a handful of people working standard hours. And some artists told me they were working on multiple games at once, which lines up with the launch of Sundown during Sunhaven's development. Second, where is all the money going? The artists are reportedly earning 3 times less than what's considered average in the industry. Sunhaven was a massive success. So, who's taking the money home? Let's take a quick step back and make sure the criticism is understood here. When people push back against the idea that Pixel Sprout is just a small studio, no one's claiming they're AAA. Most of us aren't even saying they shouldn't be considered indie. What we're calling out is the contradiction in how Pixel Sprout presents itself and the secrecy surrounding it. We're talking about a company that launched a game with hundreds of thousands of in-game assets, dozens of paid cosmetic DLCs, tens of thousands of dialogue lines, and a stream of ongoing content updates that put some well-known publishers to shame. Yet, we don't even know how many people worked on the game. If you ignore all that and your best comeback is still parroting, they are actually a small team, you're just playing dumb. To get a sense of how successful Pixel Sprout has become, let's head to Brendan's X feed. On March 10th, 2023, Sunhaven exits early access with its 1.0 launch and immediately blows up in sales. By March 14th, it is, quote, top 15 selling this week, even passing Elden Ring. On March 21st, Sunhaven peaks at 12,706 concurrent players, a tremendous success for an indie title. A couple weeks later, Brendan goes to Vegas. The month after, he gifts himself BMW's largest luxury SUV, worth close to 6 figures. Well, that doesn't sound anything like what the artists were saying. And look, I'm not saying it's wrong that Brendan got a nice car. That's actually great because it potentially means his hard work at Pixel Sprout paid off. He should be paid a fair amount. The issue is, if he's being paid as much as it looks, then there's a gigantic gap on the devs' pay, especially when it comes to artists. It gives the impression that only a select few are reaping the rewards. Whatever the case, wait, what? Brennan X? So you're Brendan's girlfriend or something? Wow, it all makes sense now. Brennan X was blaming Kyle for his shitty wage. Brendan was blaming everyone else for their shitty wages. Brennan X was playing dumb, Brendan was playing dumb. But didn't Brendan imply he doesn't know what other team members make, yet somehow his girlfriend does? And if he does know, say, the artist's salaries, then why is he lying about competitive wages? Why is he acting as a mouthpiece for the company? Maybe he made himself so irreplaceable that he could negotiate a higher salary. Or maybe he was offered equity, unlike most of the artists I spoke to. Maybe it's because Brendan happens to be a longtime friend of Bruce. Well, as I was saying, whatever the case, it comes off as incredibly selfish to defend a company just because they're benefiting you personally while your colleagues are out there sharing how much worse off they are. If Brendan's getting something out of his work, fine, good for him. But why isn't everyone else? And why is he going out of his way to downplay the testimonies of others? Why is his girlfriend so invested in doing the same? Can't wait for the next Reddit follow-up, Brendan. Artists played a critical role in making Sunhaven the success it is. Bruce himself said this was an art-led studio. But not a single artist has stepped up to defend Pixel Sprout the way Brendan has. Isn't that odd, especially when there are many more artists than programmers on the team? Where are those artists showing up in support of the company they work for, standing up and saying, "We actually get fair pay, we actually get our cut of the sales, we actually are not overworked"? I doubt you can find one. Anyway, let's set aside the drama for a second and just ask, how much has Pixel Sprout actually made from Sunhaven? While the exact number is probably only known by Bruce, there are a few specialized tools that estimate Steam game sales and revenue with a fair level of accuracy. Of those, Gamalytic seems to be the most reliable. It takes into account things like sales history, regional pricing, and regional distribution. At the time I recorded this video, Sunhaven is sitting at around 1 million copies sold, with the low end of estimates at 751,600 and the high end at 1.3 million. From that, it's estimated that Sunhaven has grossed between $12.8 and $22.5 million. Even just last week's sales brought in more revenue to Pixel Sprout Studios than what their artists earn in an entire year. And this holds true even if each copy was sold at 60% off, the steepest discount Sunhaven has ever had. And that's not even counting DLCs or Nintendo Switch sales. Whether you take the floor or the ceiling, one thing's clear: this company isn't struggling. And yet, we're still hearing directly from artists that they were underpaid, not just at the start, not just during early access, not just after launch, but even now in 2025. Pixel Sprout clearly has the means to pay their workers fairly, to invest in proper professional translations, and to actually hire their so-called team members as real employees. They had the money to do all of those things. They just chose not to. In creative fields, it doesn't take long for abuse to start looking like the norm. First, it becomes commonplace, then it starts to be praised. In the games industry, that cycle slowly evolved into what we now call crunch culture. If you're not familiar with the word crunch, it refers to extended periods of intense overwork where developers put in long hours, weekends, or even all-nighters to meet deadlines. Crunch culture is the idea that crunch is actually something good, expected, or even necessary. That praise almost always comes from the top, from people who benefit off the broken backs of everyone beneath them. I'll link a video in the cards and in the description below that covers this in more detail, and I highly recommend giving it a watch. The games industry is full of artists doing passion work. And that passion, the genuine drive to create, to see your art in a published game, to be part of something cool, gets used against them all the time. Studios don't have to offer fair compensation or a healthy work-life balance when they know people will take the job just for the chance to work on something they love. When your work is your dream, it's easy to justify the imbalance. And there will always be someone willing to make that trade. Studios benefit from pushing people past their limits, and they rarely take responsibility for the damage it causes, especially when they embrace crunch culture. This is what passion exploitation looks like. It's not always obvious. It doesn't always come with red flags. It's about companies slowly shifting your boundaries until you start accepting things you shouldn't. It's about companies knowingly creating environments where the boundaries are already too far. We've come now to the bulk of the artists' interviews. You're about to hear in their experience what was like working at Pixel Sprout Studios. What was a typical day like for you working at Pixel Sprout?
I would start work in the morning and work on tickets in priority order. We would have a stand-up where we all would state what we were working on, which I really liked because it was a chance to hear the voices of the people on my team who I really admired and wanted to connect with. Then I'd continue working until the evening, late, pre-burnout, or until I'd progressed a couple of tickets, post-burnout. I always had a feeling I was working too slowly or not doing enough, even when I was working very long days. This was compounded by not being able to discuss the tickets or see anyone else's progression. I felt disconnected with my coworkers. I wanted to get to know them and be able to support one another, share resources and references, and discuss the work we were doing. Unfortunately, there were pretty strict rules in the Discord, which included not being allowed to DM each other and not sharing information about tickets. We did get to chat in the artist Discord, but it was with the feeling of being supervised and very surface level. I'm sure we were all fairly anxious about saying the wrong thing. I remember someone being promoted and then abruptly being removed from the Discord with no real explanation as to what happened. No one wanted to ask questions, probably because we were all so worried about the same happening to us.
At the start of Pixel Sprout, everyone talked with each other and had meetings at 12:30 called stand-ups. We would talk about what we would be doing, working on in the day, and often would derail into Bruce talking about what he thought was cool at the time. Afterward, we would work. For a while, we had Discord offices where it was a little voice chat with our names on it, and we could hang out in there. So if anyone needed to ask someone else a question, they could pop in each other's offices. This usually meant Bruce would go into someone's office all day and watch them work, usually like for music to micromanage music or for writing to micromanage writing. For the first year or so of being hired, Bruce spent a lot of time talking and discussing things with me. Everything from the game to his ideals in life. I mean like 4 to 8 hour long meetings, where sometimes it was just derailed into me explaining what certain concepts in game development like a design doc were. Thing was, only I and maybe one other person at the time had even made a game on the team. Bruce worked in QA at Riot, so he had game dev experience, but not on the whole process like this before. Bruce tended to yell at some of the women on the team, and people sometimes wanted to avoid him and his drama. Despite how Bruce and I would butt heads, he treated me with a lot of respect. I imagine because at the time a lot of work relied on me, and also I was masculine sounding. Towards the end of me being around, a number of the female employees hung out in my office, and Bruce would awkwardly pop in sometimes, but usually not stay long. Toward the end of me being there, I had people under me I would manage, all artists from around the world I'd need to coordinate meetings with to train and figure things out. I wasn't too happy with how my job became managing since I wanted to do art, but also wasn't too happy that the game had turned hugely into content and content alone. I was mostly making tons of sleeves and pants, things that took the longest in the game, instead of working on polishing the huge list of things we needed to polish or plain fix.
We did a stand-up meeting every day where we would say what we worked on yesterday and what we planned on working today. Then, the rest of the day was just checking Trello, reading feedback and new tickets, then working on them, submitting work, and waiting for feedback.
From day one to the day I left, my days typically consisted on opening Trello, picking a task, putting on some music, and making pixel art for hours on end. Artists have individual Trello boards, called art pipelines, where tasks, called tickets, are assigned based on set priorities. Nearly all the tickets I worked on daily were high priority or burn down, the highest priority. If I ever managed to clear them, new urgent tickets were added, or lower priority ones were labeled urgent. The workflow loop was basically concept art, review, first pass, review, final art, review again, repeat. At first, I was pulled into art syncs, stand-ups, sprints, workshops, and whatever meetings they came up with. Eventually, I asked to step back from them because it was too exhausting to have that on top of my art production. Creating art all day is already very mentally demanding. Having to chit-chat in a second language was not helping. In my early days at the company, they used to give me small tasks for me to prove what I was capable of. Those were fun because I could move a lot of tickets in a week. As time passed, my ticket list kept growing. Deadlines got tighter. The size of the assets assigned to me increased considerably. The number of assets requested per ticket also grew. Newer projects got much bigger, and all of it slowly drained the life out of me. During the Sunhaven UI revamp, I worked past midnight many times, sometimes sitting at my desk up to 14 hours. My mental and physical health suffered badly. Bruce and his girlfriend, who was an associate producer at the time, would nitpick the hell out of everything, call in UI meetings, and closely review UI progress. They'd micromanage every step of the way, and I'd make dozens of revisions to single tickets. Later on, I was assigned to multiple projects at once, along with all their UI pipelines. Every time I thought things couldn't get any worse, they always did. They eventually isolated the whole art department, moving us from the main team Slack to a private Discord only for the artists, our managers, Caitlin and Bruce. I had no idea who was part of Pixel Sprout anymore after that.
During the first year, I would open Trello to see my tasks, draw the higher priority art, and correct my assignments based on feedback from Lexi. Once in a while, I would have a call with Lexi. As time went on, I was expected to keep producing more and more immediate priority art, was given tighter deadlines, and was expected to prove my worth outside of art to become a senior artist. My days consisted of waking up, working, stressing out from work, going to bed.
How would you describe your experience working there, both the good and the bad?
At the start, great. I was super motivated and excited to be part of the art team. I really liked my art director and assistant director. They pushed me to be better, and I'm sure we're dealing with similar stresses and doing the best they could. The way they helped me, I am still super thankful for. The team around me were really talented, and I wish I could have got to know them. I wanted to give my all to Pixel Sprout Studios, but unfortunately I felt mismanaged, unrecognized, and overall isolated and frustrated.
Generally speaking, it wasn't great. I liked pretty much every other contract of mine better, and as time went on and crunch got worse, I really hated my time there. There were good people who worked there, but they were all also thinking of leaving, and most of them left around when I did.
It felt pretty good at the start. It felt organized and friendly. I always had a good amount of things to work on, and early on I felt like my input on the art and the game was significant. Later on, it just felt like I was a cog in the art machine, just making as much art as possible, constantly given burn-down work tickets to get stuff done as soon as possible, and stress. Input was often ignored, and it felt like I didn't matter outside of an asset production machine.
The good part is that you get to meet some incredibly talented pixel artists. Other than that, it wasn't a good experience. It made me hate pixel art and game development, two things I'm passionate about since I was a child. There's this efficiency over everything mindset. You're expected to demonstrate constant productivity while reporting your activities on a daily basis. And remember, no one is an employee, yet you're expected to function as one. You hardly get any validation for your hard work. You're underpaid and replaceable. And what kind of game studio leaves their artists uncredited for years with no explanation? At the end of the day, your efforts only serve to make your boss richer, while he doesn't bother to properly reward you for your contributions to his game's success.
The artist and the level designer I worked with were all good people with amazing skill and dedication. The management made me question leaving about a dozen times. I loved Sunhaven and I loved my coworkers, whom I could only talk to under surveillance. But the workload, the management, the lack of context, and the isolation, especially during the first year, left me exhausted every single day. All I could do was draw, and I had to stay silent about how lonely and stressed out I was.
Have you experienced unreasonable deadlines, excessive workload, or burnout?
Inevitably, I did burn out after around a year and couldn't work at the same pace anymore. I started to dread working on tickets and began being given lots of technical work like turnarounds and clothing, hair, which felt like a backslide in my progression, and to me, felt like an acknowledgement that I wasn't trusted with any more integral or interesting tickets.
Yes and no. My experiences were not nearly as bad as others, but mostly because I was a bit bulletproof. There are a few moments where they would note a due date for about 2 weeks of work for me. I couldn't start on the work though because it was bottlenecked by higher-ups, usually Bruce's reviews. A few days before due date, I'd get the clear to start work, but then wouldn't be able to finish in time because it'd be 2 weeks of work to do in less than 1 week, but only because I literally wasn't allowed to start working at the right time. If I complained about this, I'd get a mix of Bruce just saying he was busy and had more important things, but I still needed to make time to do an impossible task, or a few rare times earlier on where he would say, "My bad," and say we need to forgive him. It was a pretty big double standard, because if someone else bottlenecked something, he'd expect way more than a "my bad" and instant forgiveness. When pointing this out to him, he said under his breath, "I'm so angry," to me, but then caught himself and carried on professionally. Again, to be clear, he was quite professional with me. We'd spend hours on processes and stats. We had meetings every once in a while where they would just ramble about statistics of what was done and not done on the game instead of just plain working on the game. Things were just so strangely prioritized, which led to a lot of blocked work, because the art team was way ahead of design, writing, and programming, the opposite of how most projects are done. So when design and such finally decided and figured out what to do, It made the deadline set for the art team completely unreasonable because Bruce, as he was the design team, spent so long figuring out what to do, we now had to catch up to schedule for him and because of him.
Kind of related to the last, but yeah, all three of those. After I left the studio, it took over half a year before I felt any love for art again. I felt miserable.
Yes to all three. I was constantly under the impression that I was slower than everyone else, a feeling fueled by the higher-ups from the very start. After I submitted my art test and told them how much time it took me, Bruce said, "We have an artist who's really fast. I think he's even faster than that." Lexi would say in art workshops, concepts should take no more than 30 minutes. They'd set internal story points and estimates for your tasks. If an urgent task wasn't done fast enough, they'd question your performance and just put more pressure on you. I was told by Lexi in one of her demands for results that there should be Trello uploads every day or at least every other day. After a while, you start to accept burnout as part of the job until you can't take it anymore. It's no coincidence that most people don't stay at Pixel Sprout Studios for very long.
Burnout and tight deadlines were nonstop.
Why did you leave?
I left because I had completely burned out and specifically become disillusioned after a meeting about role progression, where I was told moving higher up would mean more responsibility and work, with no guarantee of pay progression. I worked until I ground to a halt over a few more weeks and left when I felt I couldn't keep up anymore.
I signed on with the statement that I'd work for them 2 years and then leave, and Bruce said the game would be out in 1 year, despite hardly beginning it at the time I was hired. Basically, I left because I was ready to move on, but also generally was unhappy with the process and my work. Pay wasn't super great, though I should say Bruce would likely have paid me more to keep me happy at the time. When I first was employed, I asked to make sure the game had a game design doc that I would have access to because I didn't have a lot of information about the game at the time. Bruce said I would get access to this. After a month of being employed, he said I hadn't worked long enough to see it yet for security reasons. Makes sense. After a few months, he said they were redoing it because they had just fired Dima, the original writer. Okay. After a year, he said there never was a game design doc and that those docs aren't needed anyway. This was around when the game was in Kickstarter and was so jumbled and hard to understand. After turning in that I was leaving at the start of 2022, I wanted to taper down hours. I noticed that my workload never actually had a stopping point, nor did it slow down. After a few weeks of this, I pulled Bruce aside and told him again that I was leaving, but I still had tons of work assigned to me and he needed to figure out my exit. My last few weeks were spent working entirely on a completely different game from Sunhaven, not Sundown. A lot of the processes were just micromanaged by Bruce. I'd have a lot of butting heads with him about this, which led to me yelling at him because he was trying to praise Caitlin, who had just admitted she felt so burnt out and horrible. Bruce was wanting to praise Caitlin because she was burnt out from the crunch. Seeing him trying to shift culture to that of praising crunch got me to yell at him. It was de-escalated by Jennifer, producer who left around when I did, and people thanked me for standing up for them, but it was clear most people didn't stand up to Bruce at all, and to be fair, Bruce didn't get mad directly at me. He got mad at women, such as Jennifer and Jean, who he notoriously would yell at in public meetings. There was a lot that was uncomfortable to me, but mostly it was discovered as time went on. Bruce hired a lot of his close friends and family, convincing his new girlfriend to quit her very good job and work for him. She doesn't work at Pixel Sprout anymore. Hopefully, she is still doing okay. I was a bit of the odd one out, not being a longtime friend or family or someone dating Bruce, but still part of the senior team, you could say. Bruce's ideals were always a little odd and came out in weird ways. He'd go on about not liking darker skin options, and I recall a few conversations to have more than one dark skin option for players in the game, as well as more than one dark-skinned character in the game. At the time I was on, only one guard and Liam's family had dark skin and everyone else was white. This did eventually change, but it took like multiple conversations. This was also around the time Bruce would say things like Black Lives Matter is a fad and other rather political things that sort of caught me off guard. I should note, he never had issue with there being no limitation on gendered relationships, being gay, in the game. However, he did have a lot of weirdly gendered talk. I know he preferred a sort of stay-at-home role for his own relationships and showed that he wanted a lot of control regarding where his spouse would be in his ideal home, sitting by a window within eyeshot of his working desk. Bruce used to talk to me a lot, but when general morale got so low in the company, he changed as well. He literally forbade the use of the word morale because too many people were complaining about being burnt out and feeling bad. For a long while, I thought he talked with me for long periods and was listening to me and going to change things. But I never really saw changes for the better, and he tended to only surround himself with more and more yes men as time went on. People who would agree with him a lot, or at least would just do what they were told and not speak up. Sometimes just people who chose the path of least resistance. Eventually, these discomforts, along with me embracing more I wanted to do with other work and commitments, got me to leave. I always planned to leave after 2 years of work and didn't want this to get in the way.
Kind of touched on why I left here and there, but it was just miserable. I didn't feel like it mattered that I was there. I wasn't making art I cared about. I wasn't getting paid or treated well enough for the bullshit. I didn't plan to leave as early as I did, but Bruce was like, well, if you want to leave, you may as well leave sooner rather than later.
By the end of 2024, I was having a really bad time. I had been burning out for months because of a new and overscoped game they were working on, a technical nightmare for pixel art standards, and I got to a point where I'd sit at my desk to work and just start panicking. It was horrible. I then suggested to Bruce and Lexi via Slack that I take a break and come back at the beginning of 2025. I explained that I was burning out and needed a reset. They just never responded. I even messaged Caitlin, Bruce's executive assistant and development manager, to ask if she knew what was going on, but she also ghosted me. It was obvious they'd talked and decided to just leave me in the dark. 3 years in, and I still didn't matter. That was a harsh realization. For the next 2 weeks, that was all I could think about. I'd turn on my PC and check Slack every N minutes, over and over, either waiting for a reply or for someone to tell me I was fired. When I came back in early 2025, it was like nothing had happened. No one said a word. I worked a couple more months to save up and piece together a self-made severance package, then turned in my resignation.
I told Lexi I felt isolated and uncomfortable with how Pixel Sprout Studios was hiding us with the lack of credits and the negative response to posting about Sunhaven on socials. That led to me being removed from the art Discord, removed from almost all projects, and disconnected from everyone but Lexi, Bruce, and his assistant. After that, I took a week off to discuss with a lawyer about quitting and my future in case of retaliation.
I won't pretend this isn't a call for a boycott, because that's exactly what it is. Until Pixel Sprout Studios show real change, I say boycott them to oblivion. And I mean actual change, not some vague, PR-polished corporate bullshit statements. When the studios behind the games we love act as shady, cruel, and greedy as Pixel Sprout, exploiting workers, mistreating artists, and disrespecting fans, the best thing we can do is stop supporting them. Every purchase we make is a vote for the company's behavior. Our money directly supports or challenges unethical practices. And the same goes for our voices. Speaking up is how we hold them accountable. If we don't hold them accountable, they'll just keep testing how much more they can get away with. The indie game industry is already crowded with bad actors. The last thing we should do is support the rise of another. I'd like to sincerely thank the 5 artists interviewed for their incredible contribution to this video. Thank you for sharing your experiences with such care and honesty. You're all heard, appreciated, and I genuinely hope you're now surrounded by better, healthier workplaces. I'll leave you with their final message. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
The team have worked very hard on this game, and if you play it and enjoy it, great. I was in 2 minds about speaking on this, as my experience overall I would still view as positive. I was paid on time, I was given some support and guidance, and improved as an artist. I feel gratitude for all of that. But despite that, there is never smoke without fire. I think the artists and other developers who work on the game are perhaps struggling and would like their voices to be heard. It's impossible to foster a good work environment without open communication, good leadership, and everyone's belief in the company and product they're working towards. Giving the team more credit and trust will improve things, and I hope these comments are taken on board with an open mind. There is always a way to do the right thing, and I hope leadership hasn't lost sight of the dream of having a happy and prosperous team in the future.
I can be talked to directly about all this stuff. There's tons I could ramble on about during my time there, but it's sort of dependent on subject. A lot of people, including close friends and family of Bruce, left Pixel Sprout and wanted to be far away from Bruce. Generally speaking, it's hard to have a full-time job in games without working for a AAA company or mobile company. People are just trying to have a job, but the absolute basis of that job should equate to fair pay and credit, and not to hold people hostage with the consistent promise of something better only to dangle it forever without giving it. Pixel Sprout started with decent intentions, I'm sure, but it has unfortunately turned into a studio that churns out money only for the very few at the top, at the cost of the broken backs and destroyed creativity of those abused along the way.
Nothing other than the things I've already shared with MRIZ and stuff.
I have a message specifically for Bruce. Do you realize that you wouldn't even have this business without us, artists? How can you label the people who made Sunhaven shine as the C team, like they're second rate? Even if you start reclassifying your workers, paying them fairly, and finally giving us credit, I struggle to believe in a genuine change in conscience. You've benefited from silence for too long. What if nobody spoke up? Would you simply continue perpetuating your quote-unquote mistakes? To the players, if you love Sunhaven, don't feel ashamed. This is not on you, but please, be aware of what's happening with this company. Make sure others hear about this and insist on answers on their official platforms. At the very least, protest with your wallet. That's often the only thing companies like this truly care about. Until a bunch of Pixel Sprout Studios artists, writers, and other devs outside the leadership's nepotistic bubble start saying the opposite of what we're telling you. Don't buy this company's games. Don't buy their DLCs. Don't give them any more money. To my peers still working there, keep your head up. You're amazing at what you do. You're not alone. You deserve so much better.
If you like the game, I like it too. Don't feel obligated to stop playing, but for the love of God, don't work with Pixel Sprout. They will leave you empty. I would also like to share this. There is no job that matters more than your health. Fuck them if they tell you otherwise. I gained a lot of experience from Pixel Sprout Studios. My art skills evolved, and I learned what it looks like when your job doesn't value you at all.